She sacrificed 6 years. She gave him a future when he had nothing to offer but potential. She believed in a man the world had not yet confirmed. And she did it quietly, without complaint, without conditions. He was her first love, her only love, the boy she chose before she knew what choosing cost. Now picture another woman, 52 years old, successful beyond what most people build in a lifetime, single, no children, not because she didn't want them, because she spent the years that biology quietly counts doing everything else correctly. And when she finally turned to face that particular door, it was already closed. She tried to open it anyway, medically, deliberately, privately. She sat in clinical rooms. She made the appointments. She paid the invoices that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with hope. And walked away empty, every time. And then, one night, without trying, without planning, without the clinical precision of everything she had already attempted, her body did the thing it had refused to do through every deliberate effort. Now, one of these women is being called naive. One of these women is being called a home wrecker. And the man standing between both of them has never once been asked to pay the full invoice for anything he ordered. This is not a story about two women. This is a story about what people are handed, and what they are charged, and why those two things are almost never the same. I am Sean, and this is The Anonymous, where some truths don't have a name attached. I want you to understand what existed before everything broke. Because stories like this one are always told from the wreckage, and when you start at the wreckage, you inherit the wreckage's logic. Everyone becomes a type. The man becomes the villain. The women become positions. The complexity collapses into a verdict before anyone has been properly seen. I am not doing that today. So let me tell you about the world that existed before the break. A man and his girlfriend, school sweethearts. They did not meet as adults, with carefully constructed versions of themselves already in place. They met before the performance, before the protection, before the world had taught either of them what it costs to be known completely by another person. 6 years together, 5 of them without his income, without his professional confirmation, without any external evidence that the potential she saw in him was real. And she stayed. Not because she was naive, not because she had no options, because she had made a decision, before she fully understood what decisions cost, that this man was worth the uncertainty of the present. She was not just his girlfriend. She was the architecture of his survival. Now his employer, 52 years old, built everything a person is supposed to build. Successful, respected, the kind of woman who walked into rooms and changed the temperature of them without announcing herself. Single, no children. Not because she didn't want those things, because she had spent the years that biology quietly and ruthlessly counts, doing everything the world told her to do first. The career, the independence, the self-sufficiency. She followed every instruction correctly. And somewhere in the following, she tried to come back for the things she had deferred. Clinical rooms, appointments made with the precision she applied to everything, hope packaged inside medical possibility. It didn't work. Not once, not partially, not with any of the consolation that a near miss might offer. Every time, empty. There is a version of doing everything right that still leaves you alone at 52. Not because you failed, not because you chose wrong, but because the instructions society gave you were written by people who never had to choose between building a life and having one. She followed the instructions, and the instructions did not follow through. These 4 people, the man, his girlfriend, his employer, and the mother-in-law, existed inside a cordial world. Genuine warmth moving in every direction. Mutual respect. Nobody performing. Nobody positioning. Just people who genuinely liked each other. I need you to grieve that world before we go any further. Because what I am about to show you is not a story about bad people making bad choices. It is a story about what happens when real life moves through the middle of something good, and who gets handed the invoice. Let me talk about what she paid. 6 years. 5 of them as the financial and emotional foundation of a relationship built on the promise of who he would eventually become. She did not make him feel the cost. That is the detail that matters most and gets mentioned least. She absorbed it, the way people who love deeply absorb things, without ledger, without complaint, without the quiet withdrawal that most people eventually deploy when the giving starts to outlast the return. She simply continued. And here is what that kind of sustained, unacknowledged giving does to a person. It makes you certain. Not arrogant, not naive, certain. The way you become certain about things you have paid for with your own suffering. She had invested so much of herself, so many years, so much silent carrying, into the belief that this man was worth it, that the belief itself became load-bearing. She could not question him without questioning 6 years of her own judgment. And she was hopeful. Not the fragile hope of someone who needs reassurance, the deep, structural hope of a woman who chose her person before the world confirmed him, and has been waiting, patiently, for the confirmation to arrive. That hope is not weakness. That hope is the most expensive thing in this entire story. Because when the truth arrives, and it always arrives, a woman who has been certain and hopeful for 6 years does not just lose a marriage. She loses her own narrative. The story she has been telling herself about who she is, about what she chose, about what her sacrifice meant. And that is the most expensive thing a person can lose. Now her. A child she is raising alone. An agreement she is honoring that costs her everything and returns nothing publicly. I said something earlier that I want to return to. She tried. Before any of this, before this man walked into her building, before any of the complications that followed, she sat in clinical rooms and made appointments with the same precision and discipline she applied to everything she had ever built. She gave medicine every opportunity to do what her body had not done naturally. She was not passive about it. She was not resigned. She tried with everything available to her. And it didn't work. I want the audience, particularly the women in this audience, to sit with what that costs a person quietly. Not the medical cost, the interior cost, the monthly grief that has no public language, the specific loneliness of wanting something that your own body will not give you, regardless of how hard you work for it. The particular exhaustion of being successful at everything and failing at this. And then, one night, without the clinical rooms, without the appointments, without the hope packaged inside medical possibility, her body did the thing it had refused to do, through every deliberate effort. She was pregnant. And what she did next is the part of this story I need you to hear completely. She went to him. Not with ultimatums, not with demands, not with the leverage that a woman in her position, employer, benefactor, the person who had given him his professional footing, could have deployed without anyone blaming her for it. She gave him a choice, a real one. She laid every option in front of him plainly. She told him she would raise this child alone, that she would ask for nothing beyond what the child needed, that she would disappear from his world completely, protecting his marriage, protecting his wife, protecting the cordial world they had all built together, at total personal cost to herself. She offered him the full exit. No conditions, no manipulation, no performance of devastation designed to make him stay. Just a choice, laid in front of a man by a woman who loved him enough to let him leave completely. He chose to stay present for his child, and she honored that. Both of them, two adults, neither naive about the weight of what they were now managing, built an agreement. Silence as protection, not for him alone, for the child, for the wife, for the world they had all chosen to preserve. And then she was publicly humiliated for it, by people who had less than half the story, by people who will never know what she surrendered to protect them. That is not the other woman. That is a woman who paid an invoice she did not order, in full, without asking for a receipt. And now him. 35 years old. 5 years of unemployment inside a 6-year relationship. The boy who became the man inside the only relationship he has ever known. I want to say something about 5 years of unemployment that men do not say to each other. It does not just take your income. It takes your sense of yourself as someone the world has confirmed. Every morning you wake up next to a woman who is quietly carrying what you cannot yet carry. And you tell yourself the story that this is temporary, that the version of yourself you can see clearly in your own mind is about to become visible to everyone else. And every day that it doesn't, the story gets harder to tell. And then someone sees you. Before the confirmation, before the proof, before the world has agreed with what she sees. And she acts on it. I know what that does to a man. It does not excuse what followed. Nothing excuses what followed for the people who were hurt by it. But it explains the architecture of how a good man, and I believe he was a good man, found himself standing between two invoices. He did not know how to settle. But here is what I will not excuse. When she laid every option in front of him, when she gave him the full exit, when she offered to disappear completely and carry everything alone, he made a choice. The only deliberate choice in this entire story. He chose to be present for his child, which means he is capable of choosing. He has demonstrated that, which makes every other moment in this story, every moment he let circumstances decide what was his decision to make. Not the behavior of a man who didn't know how, but the behavior of a man who only chooses when the cost of not choosing finally becomes undeniable. Good women do not fix that. They absorb it, and eventually, quietly, with great dignity, they stop. One invoice in this story was never paid. The mother-in-law acted on incomplete information, publicly, with the full weight of a mother's protective certainty, and none of the responsibility that certainty requires. She had been part of the cordial world. She had welcomed the boss into the orbit of the family with the warmth you reserve for people who have earned it. She liked her, trusted her, treated her as someone worth the genuine warmth she extended to very few people outside her immediate circle. And then something shifted in the architecture around her. She felt it, or heard it, or saw something she could not unsee. And she did what mothers do when they believe their family is in danger. She acted. Publicly. Without the full story. Without the conversation that might have given her the full story. Without the pause that separates protection from destruction. And she humiliated a woman who at that precise moment was raising a child alone, honoring an agreement she had no obligation to maintain, protecting a marriage she owed nothing to, asking nothing from anyone in that family. I understand her. A mother who loves fiercely will always move before she has the complete picture, because waiting for the complete picture feels like complicity. But understanding her is not the same as excusing her, because the woman she destroyed publicly was the one person in this entire story who had done the most to protect everyone, including her. Protective love without complete information is not protection. It is damage with a noble label attached. So, I am leaving you with 4 questions today. Answer all 4. Not the version you would post, not the version that makes you sound like you have arrived somewhere. The honest version. The one you would only say out loud to someone you completely trusted. First, the mother-in-law had less than half the story. She acted on it publicly. She caused real, lasting damage to a woman who had been quietly protecting her family, including her, without recognition or request. Was that protection? Or was that anger, wearing a better costume? Second, the boss, 52 years old. She tried for a child and was told no by her own body every single time. One night gave her what years of trying could not. She raised that child alone. She honored an agreement that cost her everything and returned nothing publicly. She was humiliated for a version of events that was not the complete truth. At what point does her silence stop being sacrifice and start being self-erasure? Third, he chose once, deliberately, clearly, when she laid every option in front of him. He chose his child, which means he knows how to choose. If you were him, Not who you think you should choose. Not the answer that makes you sound evolved. Not the version that protects your image in the comments. Who do you actually choose? And what does that answer tell you about yourself? 4. The wife. She now has the complete truth. Every part of it. The history, the pregnancy, the child, the agreement, the silence that was built, in part, to protect her. Does she stay? Not should she stay. Not what would you tell her to do. What do you think she actually does? And is that the same as what she should do? Because forgiveness and staying are not the same decision, and leaving and giving up are not the same thing either. Tell me where she goes from here. I'm Sean. And that's the part no one says out loud.